Welcome to Turtle Talk. This is Morgan's story and the family's journey. I'm Craig, and
I'm Michelle. Welcome.
welcome back. And we are still at the beginning of 2020. Got through some virus stuff, but we got some surgeries coming.
Yeah. 2020 started off pretty horrible for me. My dear friend Elizabeth from Lincoln, she passed away, and that was on New Year's Day. That was a devastating day for me as well as for her family. She had become like a sister to me the whole time I was at the hospital. She always came. She was the one that would sneak me in food and some beer, and we'd giggle like school kids and stuff. And that was just, we had loss upon loss. And, we lost Tom's dad in 2018. I mean, we no more than get Morgan home, and his dad passes away. So here we are making our first big road trip with Morgan out to Wyoming for Tom's dad's funeral. And it was just, that one, it didn't affect me as much as it affected him because it's his dad. And, we have two cars, so we have to drive out in two separate cars. And I just remember thinking and praying for Tom that, geez, we suffered this big loss with Morgan. Whether anybody realizes that, our daughter as we knew it was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're losing Tom's dad. And so it's just kind of like second big loss in a year, or less than a year. And it's like, how do you keep standing after that? Hold that thought. I got to look up a date here real quick.
Okay.
Because I got to tie it into this.
Now I understand that hospital dash. Too bad.
Right.
I remember you telling me that story
Of what?
when they said tough shit, basically, because
Yeah.
you weren't vaccinated.
So here we are. We're struggling with, our whole new normal. However you define normal.
Yeah.
Tom's dad dies. And we're just trying to get through. And then my uncle dies. So 2018 really freaking sucked. My uncle dies. And I have such fond memories of him. He would always call and he'd say, "Do you know who this is?" And I'd be like, "You're Uncle Ralph." And he's like, "No, I'm the Easter Bunny, or I'm Santa Claus." And it was just, I just have such delightful memories of him. And he got sick and he passed away. And then next thing you know, later in the year, my grandma passes away. Like, it was just 1, 2, and 3, like, super fast. And it was hard because that was my last grandparent. And, she was just such a gem. And I remember when I found out I was pregnant with the triplets, I was crying. And Grandma was very religious. And you better toe the line and know your prayers. And, and such an inspiration. Like, really such an inspiration. And I remember when I found out I was pregnant with triplets, and I'm bawling, and I'm like, pity party, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Grandma never raised her voice at us kids. And she scolded me that day. And she said, "Now you need to stop this." And she says, "Quit feeling sorry for yourself, because God only gives you what you can handle, and He just gave you a gift." And I still cried, but, it really made me think. And so then we fast forward to Morgan's accident, and my grandma's at the hospital, and that just kept going through my head, and she gave me a hug, and she says, "Now remember, dear, God only gives you what you can handle. And I said, well, Grandma, I said, I think God's overloaded my plate because I don't know that I can handle this. So then we go to the rehab center, we come back, we get out, Tom's dad dies. And it's like, blow number one. Mm-hmm. And then my uncle dies, blow number two. Well, then my dear friend, I called her Mama Grace, and she was in El Paso, and she died. Unexpectedly, she had a massive stroke, and she died. And, Elizabeth dies, and it was just so much loss. Grandma Grace, Mama Grace, and my grandma, and Elizabeth, and Lane, and it was just... And that was all between January and August. And we're trying to navigate new normals with Morgan, and we're going to these funerals. And the loss just became more than a person could bear. And I just thought, geez, God, why am I doing this? Why are we even going through this? Just, I need some joy. But the whole time the thing that kept echoing in my head was Grandma saying, God only sends you what you can handle. Sometimes I don't think it's fair. But I have to remember God has a bigger plan, But, it was like loss on top of loss on top of loss. And I know January to August is quite a span, but it's really not. It's a blink. Mm-hmm. So it was just all these things kept stacking up. And, and there's another piece to all of this because we had filed the lawsuit. And so discovery is happening. And during all of this time in 2019, 2020, all of this time we're getting all this discovery. So, it's just, it just got to be too much. We're seeing depositions of these cops, and, boy, when stuff gets real, do you continue to hold the line, or do you start throwing people under the bus to protect yourself? And some of the things that were coming out was horrific. It was horrific, some of the things that the cop was doing before the accident ever happened. And we didn't want to be out of the loop with the attorneys and with the information. We felt that we needed to know every piece as we went, which was great, but it also just... the anger buildup, it just, it was tough. So, in 2018 the first part was deposition. So, we have we have Lane passing and Grandma, Ralph, Grace. Well, Grace was in 2020 and so was Elizabeth. But, in 18, we had 3 family members, and it just, and we're learning all this information, and it's one thing after another, and wow, maybe I shouldn't be so proactive. Maybe Tom and I should have just been blind, but, and we'll get, when we get to the legal stuff, we'll tell all. It'll be multi-episode.
Yeah. But you just said you and Tom giving up. That's not who you are at all. That wasn't even in the... I mean, look at from the minute you were at the hospital.
I know.
It's never about giving up, ever.
No, it hasn't been. But, boy, there's times when you really have to grab your bootstraps and pull hard.
Yeah.
Because we were in quicksand. I felt like, and we both felt that way, that we were in quicksand like 90% of the time, and we felt like no matter what we did,
Yeah.
it was a struggle trying to pull through it, and oh, I what do you do? What do you do? Because, you don't have many choices. You either run away, you quit, or you carry on. And I guess, fortunately, neither one of us are quitters. So,
For better or worse.
Although I do remember my brother telling me one time, you never finish anything. And I kind of laugh at that now, thinking,
Yeah.
Those things are probably boring. That's why I didn't probably finish them. But
some things never finish.
Aren't we all like that at some point?
I know I am.
But here we are. Fast forward again. We're kind of jogging back and forth in the 18 to 20 category there, and and we're surgery. We're sitting alone in Mayo Clinic, like. That was eerie.
Yeah.
It was like, this place is massive and it's like empty, but we keep going. Surgeries are looking good. We finally get one fixator off. Tom finally got to come home from wherever he was, Fort Hood. And, he came home like in, I don't know, I want to say like February. So,
Okay.
He was around through going and traveling, but the unfortunate piece was he could go with us because, school is remote. Everything is remote.
Yep.
Right? So he could go with, but only one of us was allowed to go in with her to the Mayo Clinic. He could be with us at the hotel in the drive, which was great.
Yeah.
Because these weekly trips
I was going to say,
suck.
You finally had a chauffeur?
I had a chauffeur. Hey.
Sorry. Morgan had a chauffeur. She'll yell at me if I don't say it.
Yeah, Morgan does yell at you, don't you? So, there were some pros and cons to it. It was kind of nice having a whole hotel to yourself. Restaurants were kind of non-existent, but
especially Minnesota.
But at least DoorDash worked. You could order food to go or for pickup, drive-through. So that helped and stuff. But it just, I don't know, starting 2020 off with my friend dying and COVID and all these trips and empty hospitals and empty hotels, and it was lonely. Yeah. And the world, we had friends who had parents and grandparents pass away, and I'm sure a lot of it was just heartbreak, being lonely. It was a struggle. Like, I'm not a conformer much, so, we kind of did our own thing and whatever, Come on, like, I just thought this, whatever, the social distancing was the stupidest thing people ever came up with.
My favorite from back then was wiping down your groceries with Clorox wipes.
Oh, I know.
That was still to this, like, that's...
And I just have to laugh because now... Here's people running, coughing, sneezing all over the place, and nobody even thinks twice about it. You walk into Walmart and you grab a cart and whatever, like germs are everywhere, but that's how you build immunity. When you're kids, we ate dirt, we ate dog food, we ate whatever, you touch stuff in the barn and you lick your fingers. Like, what? I mean, come on. Kids don't stop to think that you need to wash your hands. So, I think...
We've all met Hazley.
Yes.
Yeah, we know. Sorry, Hazley.
It just... Sometimes I just thought common sense flew out the window, which is how we felt a lot about Morgan's Care. Sometimes common sense just went out the window. Like... We have money for therapy equipment. Let's order the stuff. And instead, we're going to argue about it and say, I don't feel comfortable doing this.
Yeah.
Like, then you're in the wrong field. You are in the wrong field. Get out of it. We did finally acquire some eye gaze technology for Morgan.
Yep. Touched on it a little bit.
Yeah. And so that was pretty awesome. However, her eyes, then, we get this, but she has a deficit in her right eye, and it's not super strong, so her eye kind of veers like this. And, knowing now, there's a lot of things we should have done then, but, it's okay because I think we can still do some correction and stuff. But the eye gaze became very tired for her, and then she'd just close her eyes whenever we'd pull it out. And then, we got it, but there was no support.
Yeah.
So then it breaks down. Well, it didn't really break down. It just we couldn't figure out how to make the main screen come back up. And gosh, for what you spend on those things, like thousands and thousands and thousands. And this is the best we can get.
Yeah.
So that was pretty frustrating, there. And this is where, well, both in Lincoln and at the place in Sioux Falls, we really got frustrated with therapists who said, we get to therapy and they'd say, what do you want to do today? Like every therapy place that we've been to or interviewed or anything, are you TBI specific? Do you know TBI protocol? And, do you have a plan? So if you, as the smart person in the room, right, or supposed to be, you're the one with the degree, you don't ever say to a patient, so what do you want to do today? My response is, you need to have a plan. And so we really started running into this. I thought maybe this place had been different because we heard this a few times when we were in inpatient. And in some days it was okay because they still kind of had things planned. But it was like, now we're wasting time. Therapy is only 40 minutes long and we've just wasted 15 of it for you to run and get the supplies you need to do therapy. So now we're out of inpatient and we're outpatient now, and we're getting these questions. These questions are starting to come up again, like, oh, what would you like to do today? And I tell you what, there was a day when I just lost it. And I'm like, you're the therapist. You are getting paid big bucks to help us reach this goal of making Morgan better. And you're asking me, or asking me what we should do today. Oh, I tell you what, that's kind of like going to the doctor saying, I'm sick, and he says, so what would you like? What medicine would you like?
Right.
Or what do you think we should do for treatment?
Did that happen?
Frequently.
But did that happen at Mayo?
Never at Mayo.
At the one that you
The one in Sioux Falls.
had to get rid of.
Yep.
Yeah.
We were still with them, in 2020.
Yep.
For part of the time and stuff. But then, we got established with Mayo, and it was great because then they started getting us
Whole team.
Like amazing whole team.
Yeah.
And it's been nothing but a blessing ever since,
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're at the therapy. I wish my memory was 100%, because it's been a while. I mean, I still remember things vividly like they were yesterday.
Yeah.
The fixator, that was, he showed us the device beforehand. It's got this like metal oval on the bottom and a big circle up here. And then all these rods, and they put wires into her toes that hook to this metal frame, and these rods going into her legs at all these different places. I mean, it was this big cage on her foot that was screwed into her leg, wires through her feet. I'm just like, oh. So we kind of had an idea of what it would look like. He showed us pictures and stuff, but the reality of it, she went into surgery and they did a a neurectomy on her foot to help calm things down there, and then they put this cage on, and she come out of surgery, and we're up in the hospital room, and everything's wrapped up, so we really couldn't see it. And the doctor came in, and he's like, I want you to see what we got, and he unwrapped it, and I looked at it, and I didn't know if I wanted to throw up, if I wanted to cry, if I wanted to, what the hell did you do to my daughter, you know, because it was so intimidating.
Yeah.
It was awful. So look under our photo page, you'll see pictures of it, but it was insane. It really was. And I just remember thinking, oh, this poor girl is going to be in so much pain. And he grabs the cage above the toe and just lifts her leg up, and I'm like, oh, don't do that to her. That's going to hurt. And he says, no, really, it's okay. It's okay, because the wires go straight through, and she's not moving. Like, that foot is not moving.
Right.
You know. And, oh, my gosh, that was...
Did you get any complications, infections, anything like that?
You know, actually, no, we didn't. The doctor... After, I don't know, the first fixator, I think it was, after the first one, he said, you know, I have never, ever had a patient who did not get a pin site infection. He said, Morgan is my first. And he's like, Mom, kudos to you and whoever, because we did not have one pin site infection, because he had told us that, you know, sometimes the pin sites get infected, and that could be dangerous, you know. Like, she's got these open holes with these rods sticking out. You know, pretend this is a rod and it's sticking out. But that's going through the skin. And granted, you know, the skin kind of closes up around it like an earring and stuff. But these are much larger. And you don't want bacteria and anything getting in there, because where's it going to go? It'll go right into the bone.
Right.
And we don't want that. So... I was pretty neurotic about cleaning the pin sites, and he's like, you know, you only have to do this. And I'm like, okay, well, if he says do it twice, I'm going to do it 4 times, because double is better, right? Which was kind of my whole thinking on that, you know. So it was, I probably spent a half hour every day cleaning every single pin site, using Clorox wipes on her cage itself. So... in cleaning her fixators, I kind of realized a few things, that the air conditioning or the heat in the house at the time, you know, whatever the temperature was, the metal was changing with the temperature. And it dawned on me that, oh, this might not be a good thing, right? So I know through the cold parts, I went and bought like some Sherpa leather almost. It like had like a leather on the outside and Sherpa on the inside, and I made this baggie basically to put over everything, and you know, elastic at the top to keep that metal from getting too hot or too cold, because we couldn't figure it out for a while. Like, we'd wrap her foot in a blanket and stuff, but drafts could still get through. And boy, I got to thinking, gosh, that must be painful. Right? So the fixator itself, after all the pin sites healed and everything, you know, she was good. We were picking it up by its cage, and it was kind of funny to watch people freak out when we lift her foot up to do something, put a pillow under it. You know, so mind you, we're in a wheelchair, her footrest is up, we got a pillow under it, we got to keep her foot on that and stuff. But I grab her metal cage, and people were like, you know, freaking out, because they're like, oh my God, doesn't that hurt her? And actually, no, it didn't. I was surprised, you know, but the cold or the extreme heat, you know, would affect her feet really bad. So, you know, it took us a little bit to clue in on that maybe just wrapping in blankets wasn't good enough. And, you know, because we're making our weekly trips, and it's March, April, it's cold, it's chilly. You know, so we learned a lot going through this, you know, and stuff. And so it's, the fixator was quite challenging. You know, it was very scary and very intimidating at first. But once, you know, we kind of got in the rhythm, and every day there were 6 struts on it.
Okay.
So from the top to the bottom, there were 6 struts. Now, her feet, instead of being like this, were down and locked in like this. So, that's what her feet were.
Right.
Her ankles had fused into that position. So with the fixator, we'd turn and the computer, like we go to Mayo, and the first thing we did was x-rays on that foot, and then the doctor would load them into this program, and the program would say, okay, in order to do this, you need to adjust this strut, and it'd label every strut, how many clicks to turn it, and to bring it over and up into what they call plantar grade, which is flat foot. So it took a little bit of like, okay, and I can't see like these tiny little numbers because my eyes aren't young anymore. So I bought a magnifying glass, right? So I could sit there and look at all the numbers. I'd look at the sheet, look at the numbers, and you'd make your little adjustments because they're tiny, all these tiny little lines. It's like reading a thermometer, right?
Yeah.
So, but we did it, and it was, the doctor was not super aggressive in moving her feet. Let's just do it nice and slow so she wasn't in a lot of pain. It's kind of like with braces, sometimes they get too aggressive on cranking it up, and your teeth would hurt. And the doctor was so kind, not wanting to do that to her. And so for that, we were so thankful for Dr. Rissman. He was, gosh darn, an amazing foot guy.
Did they have to break her ankle to be able to move it?
I think I vaguely remember him saying they had to break something or unfuse it because it had fused. And how that process was, I guess my assumption was that they had broke it, because I think that's, kind of where the conversation went and stuff, But could you imagine?
Good thing they put a nerve.
Yeah. The neurectomy there.
Yeah.
And it's just frustrating because all of that could have been prevented if we went back to ICU and they put hard boots on her
from the
and
beginning.
hand splints on her from the beginning. And then when we were at the rehab center in inpatient, they thought, let's try and fix her feet. So they did the serial casting.
Right.
And
that horrible
procedure, and I was telling the doctor at Mayo that they had done that multiple times, and he said that is so archaic. There is no reason to ever do that. He said it is so much pain for the people that are going through it. He goes, that is not even in our book of treatment. He said nobody should be doing serial casting like that. So
that's pathetic.
And for as bad as her feet were, they weren't helping anything. I mean, we got like 1/8 of an inch gain at what cost to Morgan?
Right.
Tons
of pain.
It was tons of pain. So, I honestly, the external fixator was way less pain for her than that serial casting was.
I bet.
And what a beautiful blessing. Now that we're done with that, they call them AFOs, and they're hard. Yeah. They're hard little boots that she wears to keep her feet from dropping and stuff. And, we could put tennis shoes over them. I've made boot covers for those too. And, when it gets really cold, because the plastic gets cold and stuff. But, and even now we've upgraded from the hard boots that just don't let her feet move to ones with hinges in, because she's trying to walk. So,
yeah.
Her ankles need to move freely. And her range of motion now in her feet is such a blessing. I tell you, that doctor went above and beyond. And of course, then he introduced us to Dr. Ree, who was the doctor who did the selective neurectomies and the tendon transfers, because Morgan's hands were like this. And now, they're kind of like this, but she can open her fingers. So we have splints that she wears overnight, to keep her fingers loose and stuff. And these two doctors are amazing, and they're just the first two.
Yeah.
They're the first two.
Will there be more, like,
fixators.
Fixator stuff, hands and feet.
No, we're done with those. As long as we keep the splints on her and stuff, and don't let the contractures come back, which, she's walking, she's standing and she's taking steps and stuff. And we spend a significant amount of time during the day standing. So, just think about it. She's not sitting around being lazy. She's standing, putting pressure on there, building these bones back up.
Yeah.
Because that was the other thing early on that we were figuring out, with the leg and everything. When the trauma hospital reset her broken femur. Now, granted, it was
shattered.
It was shattered, and it looked like chicken bones had been frayed and stuff, and it the alignment wasn't quite right, so the foot and the hip weren't aligned as they should be. So we did ultimately have another surgery at Mayo to get the rod set correctly for proper alignment, which made a huge difference in walking. So I'm anxious for the day when she can walk independently, even with a walker. But these doctors I remember the first time we met Dr. Rissman, the foot guy. He said, I walked in and I said, he goes, well, what can I do? And I said, our goal is to help her walk someday. And he kind of looked at me a little crazy, like, there's no way, but he said, okay, we'll help you get there. I said, well, we can't even try because of how her feet were at that time. And I'm very thankful for him just really taking that chance and saying, okay, whether she walks or not, the situation she was in was painful for her. So now she kicks us and, flaps her little feet when she's in the pool, so, hey, good things are coming, right?
Exactly.
So we were learning as we went, from 18 to 20, it was a whole bunch of new things, new normals, new meds, new surgeries, new outlooks.
Yeah.
She drew an airplane.
Yeah.
She could talk.
Fluffy dragon.
The fluffy dragon. She could talk to us through eye gaze. Her feet got plantar grade so she could stand, So even with all the loss in that 2-year period, which, I still struggle with, because nothing in life is fair, it seems like, but even with all the loss, there were still so many blessings, and for that we're thankful, and it's still everything on this journey is just faith. People say, how do you do it? And I said, listen, once again, we have control over nothing except our faith.
Right. Yeah.
And, it's still to this day our faith that walks with us every day, that gets us through, like even today, just now while we're recording, I had kind of given up hope. And yesterday I'm doing duck chores and the ducks and I are outside and I'm filling their little swimming pool, and I just I'm talking out loud with the ducks and just praying that if the situation's meant to be, then everything will fall into place. And by golly, today everything fell into place, so I guess it was meant to be.
Yeah.
So just always got to keep the faith, right?
That's right. It'll give you what you can handle.
It's easy to do, to keep the faith when things are good. It's keeping the faith when things are tough.
Yeah.
Because there's more times than not I'd like to be angry and hate, but that does nobody any good. So...
yeah. You hurt yourself more than the thing or person you're hating gets affected.
Really. And that was another piece of advice my grandma gave me, because the cop that did this to Morgan, I still find now and then that I'm saying how much I hate this person. How dare he he should have known better. He was the adult in the situation. You know, I hate him for trying to kill my daughter.
Right.
And my grandma had said something about hate will only kill me, not him.
That's a good way to put it.
You know, and it took me a long time to understand that, to get past the hate. And I had gone to a healing service with Morgan one time, and I was talking to the priest there, and I just said, I have so much hate on my heart. And he said, you know, then you need to pray for that person. And I looked at him and I said, you are crazy. I'm not praying for him. And he said, no, you're just going to pray for him. Even if it's one Our Father a day for him. You just pray that God will handle him and that you can find forgiveness. And it was really surprising. I diligently did this. I thought, well, this priest is crazy, but, you know, sorry, Father Steele, I do love you. But I thought he was crazy, but by God, I did. And it took about 5 months of doing it every day diligently. And it really was a challenge. It was really a challenge to my faith and to myself to do it. But I find that now I can say I really dislike this person, but the hate is less and less and less. And it's just a little now. You know, I remember praying about that one time. You know, like through all of this stuff with Morgan, I spent a lot of time in the chapels at St. Mary's and across the street from Mayo and stuff. And, you know, I've learned a lot about prayer and listening to God when he talks, because sometimes I thought it was just my conscience talking to me, but really it's not. It's God talking to you. And, you know, there was a point where a lot of different times the signs were right there, or I'd hear, vengeance will be mine. And I just thought, I have to remember that, because he's going to have to answer someday for everything that he's done. And I don't get to decide.
Right.
God does. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
It's his plan anyways.
It's his plan. And, you know, I've gotten better about saying it's all okay. Mm-hmm. So, and thanks to Morgan for that one.
Yeah. She's going to get such a big ego off this.
Thank you guys for watching. We really appreciate it. We love hearing from you guys. So keep the comments and the questions coming for us.
Yes. Love the questions. Please subscribe. Go to www.givemorgan.org or visit me at my real estate website, realtorcraigbertrand.com. And we always want your questions, comments, like, and share wherever you listen or watch.
Thank you.
Thank you.